BronxNet. Your voice, your views, your vision.
Good evening and welcome to BronxTalk. We have sent invitations to all of the candidates for mayor to appear on our program. Tonight we present our second one-on-one with a mayoral candidate. Our guest tonight is a controller of New York City and a Democratic candidate for mayor. The Honorable John Liu returns to BronxTalk. We have plenty to talk about with him, about being controller and his campaign as well, and a whole range of topical issues. To ensure balance and objectivity in all of our interviews with mayoral candidates, we will not be taking live phone calls, but you can email questions or comments to us, and we can try to incorporate them into our program. The email address is bronxtalk@hotmail.com. For now, the controller of the City of New York and a candidate for mayor, please join me in welcoming back to BronxTalk, John Liu. Thank you for joining us, sir.
Great to be here. So, Gary, you invited all the others as well?
We did.
Oh, boy.
And they're not, where are they?
You know how many times I've been on BronxTalk? I thought...
we were trying to count before. It's a couple of times, and I think we did a debate when you were...
Yes, when I was running for controller.
When you were running for controller.
That's right.
Which you... whether you won the debate or not, I don't know, but certainly
well, I won the
will
election.
show.
That's right.
That was most important. All right, let's get right to it, and I know people want to hear you talk about this. Two former fundraising associates were convicted of wire fraud involving illegal campaign donations. On New York One last week, you defended them, saying you are the target, and you're pinning hopes on an appeal. But from a political point of view, and we got an email from a viewer who said he likes John Liu, but he doesn't want to see the mayor going the way of Shirley Huntley or Eric Stevenson. Can you win against formidable competition? The public advocate, the council speaker,
right,
a former candidate for mayor, and others. If people have a choice and a close choice, they say, you know what, he's got a tainted record, let's look for somebody else. Can you win this race with all of this swirling around?
Well, Gary, I don't think my record is tainted in any way. First of all, my record as comptroller has been one that I'm very proud of. We've been very vigorous with our audits and contract review. We've saved billions of dollars for the taxpayers. We're continuing to look into the potential waste that we've seen in the Van Cortlandt Park project, the Croton Reservoir project, filtration plant. We've also got an issue with regard to our pension funds. I've been improving the process. We are now over 40% cumulative returns on the pension portfolio, and I've saved money and created jobs in the process by accessing the capital markets to optimize our debt burdens, to lower the interest rates that our taxpayers have to pay on the bonds that we issue for our schools, roads, bridges, and parks improvements. So my record as comptroller is not tainted in any way. I'm very proud of the record. On the fundraising trail, on the campaign trail, specifically with regard to fundraising, there have been these innuendos, insinuations that have been, as you mentioned, swirling around for years now. For 4 years, they've been investigating this. For two years of the investigation elapsed, and they still had nothing, which at that point they started this undercover operation. And again, I don't know if every campaign gets an undercover operation, especially one that after 2 years of investigating, they still hadn't had anything. And so that ultimately ensnared one of my supporters, one of hundreds of supporters that I have out there. And they threw the book against my former treasurer. I'm very proud of my former treasurer, Jenny. She's a good person. Did she make a mistake in judgment? Yes, she called her ex-boyfriend and said something that she shouldn't have said in terms of offering to reimburse a contribution. But that never happened. And was that really a federal crime? I mean, you know, no one in my team has ever been accused of taking money, taking bribery, or anything like that. There was the innuendos of a massive straw donor scheme in my campaign. You know, after 4 years and this lengthy trial that lasted a few weeks, what did they establish? they established a small number of straw donations out of the 6,000 donations that I've had. And there was no way, even according to the testimony, no way that my campaign folks could have known about it. So, you know, we're going to refund those contributions. There's several $1,000s there out of $3.5 million that I raised. So, look, as I said, and I guess you saw the show, I don't question the motivations behind this investigation, but I'm very proud of the fact that if any other campaign was held to the same level of scrutiny and the same level of investigation, my campaign and my folks would come out head and shoulders above everybody else.
You had said, and you're suggesting here that it's, you know, going after you. Are there political enemies? I mean, is this about because you're the first Asian candidate for mayor? You know, who has it in for John Liu to go to this length to do 4 years of investigation and wiretapping and everything else?
Well, you know, I'm a candidate for office and a current office holder in New York City, which, in my unbiased opinion, is the greatest city in the world. And in this city, politics is not, it's a full contact sport, no question about it. And so I don't complain about what people do politically or otherwise, and I never question the motivations behind this investigation. I was always the first to say, if anybody thinks something is wrong with my campaign or thinks something is not fully above board, by all means, look into it, investigate it thoroughly. But at this point, we've got 4 years of an investigation, thousands of my supporters being interrogated, 1 million documents reviewed, and they even listen in on my phone conversations for what I've been told is an unprecedented 18 months. And what do they have at the end of all this? A prosecutor saying in his closing summations in the trial that I must have known about all of this stuff because we used code language like a fundraiser was Richard's event. Gary, if you have a fundraiser for me, and I hope to persuade you to do so.
It's not going to happen.
Okay, but say you did.
Yes.
I guess what we would call it. Gary's event. And is that so different from any other campaign? The point here is that I fundraise like everybody else, well, everybody except Mike Bloomberg. I wish I was like him, and I could just write my own campaign of one big fat check. But the reality is that I fundraise like everybody else. I've held myself to very strict standards. We don't take contributions from people doing business with the city. As comptroller, I don't take contributions from Wall Street. And yet somehow I'm the only campaign that's being investigated. Fine, I can live with that. There's politics or whatever. But if other campaigns were held to the same level of scrutiny, I think we would come out shining.
Your campaign put out something positive for you today, saying that 3 Manhattan political clubs endorsed your campaign. How significant is this? Does this mean anything really, or is it just, well, that's nice, but I don't put a lot of stuff
I'm very proud of the fact that last week about half a dozen organizations held endorsement votes, and these are Manhattan reform clubs that are not leadership driven by any stretch of imagination. These are secret ballots held amongst the club membership, the bona fide club membership, and we had a clean sweep of all the clubs that held membership votes in terms of who the members thought the club as a whole should endorse for mayor of New York City. I won every single one of them. It wasn't 3, it was actually 5 and 1 in progress. So I'm very proud of the fact that these are grassroots voters. By the way, these were all secret ballots, so no one's vote could be influenced in any way. And I won the vote at each and every one of them. It's not like I won some of them or I won half of them. I won all of them.
Here in the Bronx, with a rather large amount of fanfare, Borough President Ruben Diaz Jr. went for Bill Thompson. Was that disappointing to you? What do you think?
It's disappointing. I think very highly of Ruben. But in the Bronx, there are some clubs that are going to have their endorsement votes as well. None yet. And I look forward to competing fairly in all of those clubs that are going to have a vote of their membership. I think I'll do quite well. And as you know, I'm here in the Bronx almost on a daily basis. This is a borough that I'm very fond of. Although I cannot claim to be a Bronxite, I certainly would love to at some point, but I've spent a great deal of time in my young years as well as recently.
You went to school down the block here, right?
Down the block, yeah, literally down the block. As comptroller, I've paid a great deal of attention to the economic development that's taking place or that should be taking place here in the Bronx. And as mayor, you will see me quite a bit.
What do you, speaking of the Bronx and actually this area around where the studio is, what did you make of the decision to put an ice skating center in the Kingsbridge Armory?
I support the decision. I think this is something that we don't really have in New York City. We have some ice skating rinks, but there's no real world-class ice facility, not just here in New York City, but anywhere in this whole region. So I think this will be a regional draw. The jobs that will be created are going to be good living wage paying jobs. And it will be a complement to the economic activity that we already see taking place in the Bronx. It's not going to be another retail establishment that potentially gives people really low wages and just displaces similar economic activity from the nearby blocks. So I think this will be a tremendous boon to the Bronx. I give kudos to Ruben for making this happen. And I look forward to the jobs that it'll create right here for Bronxites.
On this show, maybe about a month or two ago, he was sitting in that seat. The borough president said that the Fresh Direct project, when I said to him and we laid out some of the objections, and he said there's 3 words, jobs, jobs, jobs. He said this project will create jobs. This is the guy who put through the living wage bill. He says these will be good jobs for the Bronx. But you've come out against the Fresh Direct deal. Why is that?
I think from the borough president's perspective, whoever the borough president is should be advocating for as many projects as possible that come into his or her borough. And so our borough president, Ruben, he did the right thing to advocate for Fresh Direct moving here. As city controller, though, I've got to keep an eye on the overall economic development policy. And the amount of subsidies given to Fresh Direct was just woefully out of line. It was $130 million. Given to a company who threatened to move to New Jersey when all their customers are in New York City. Most of them in Manhattan, a growing base of customers in Brooklyn, Queens, and now in the Bronx as well. The thought that they were going to move to New Jersey and we needed to give them $130 million of taxpayers' money to get them to stay in New York. It didn't matter which borough they were going to stay in or move to, whether it be Bronx, Queens, Brooklyn, or Manhattan, or even Staten Island. The point is that that's too much. And it's not just Fresh Direct that I've criticized. There are other projects involving huge subsidies to big corporations that I think were unwarranted. And who's to say that even if Fresh Direct did somehow follow through on their threats to move to New Jersey, for $130 million, I bet you we could have created created a company that would have much more successfully competed against Fresh Direct based in New Jersey for our customers right here in New York City.
The lawsuit that's out there is about environmental concerns, not about these issues, and I'm just curious if that other situation didn't exist, would you still say this process is a flawed process?
I would, but I was also getting to some of the environmental issues. You have the South Bronx, which has long complained about environmental injustice and the fact that we've got very high asthma and health disparities in the South Bronx area. I've been to a number of forums where people are very upset over this deal. So I think the whole process has not completely played out yet, but community review and input is essential to good government.
You've audited the city's EDC, found that they...
Many times.
Many times. One of the audits found that they not only failed to properly evaluate the companies selected to receive a public subsidy, but neglected to monitor those companies, etc.
One audit, but found in numerous instances.
The Yankee garages, are taxpayers going to foot the bill for a default on those garages?
I certainly hope not.
And then if not, who pays for that?
That was a terrible deal to begin with. The Economic Development Corporation, by my audit, has had some very faulty analysis. They essentially relied upon the developer of those parking lots' own analysis without really checking the validity of that analysis. Mm-hmm. That's something that the EDC essentially handed those developers a blank check, and they shouldn't have done so. And so we're hoping, and we're trying to contain the situation so that when the bonds default, and it looks like they are going to default, then that will be taken care of in whatever reorganization that's going to take place with that developer, and not be subject to the taxpayers, or I should say the taxpayers should not be subjected to that default.
The whole process of contracting, and then of course subcontracting, the notion of subcontracting is a way that a lot of the, I don't want to use the word payoff, but a lot of this kind of giving friends the job, this
Right.
patronage system works out. Now you've addressed that directly, saying that New York would become the first municipality to establish a subcontracting database. Would this hurt business? Do you think ultimately people will say, you know what, I'm not doing business with the city because now then, you know, it'll be oppressive monitoring those kinds of
No,
things?
it's not oppressive at all. This is transparency, and we're talking about taxpayers' money here. Let's be very clear. The contractors who work for the city of New York are subject to some very strict requirements, as they should be. I mean, this is taxpayers' money. Unfortunately, we have seen a proliferation of subcontractors that are not subject to any of this scrutiny. And this has created a lot of problems. For example, you may recall the City Time fiasco, a project that was supposed to cost $63 million, and by the time I took office as comptroller, the City Hall had paid more than $700 million, a lot of it going to subcontractors that were kind of flying below the radar. My office, number one, I'm very proud of the fact that we stopped any additional money from going into the implementation of City Time, and we were able to start an audit that then led to an investigation that ultimately recouped $500 million for the taxpayers of New York City. But a lot of the waste was caused because it was very difficult to keep an eye on the subcontractors. And City Hall itself didn't help the situation because they kept hiring layers upon layers of consultant to watch other consultants. They would manage their first set of consultants by hiring another set of consultants to manage the original set of consultants. So the subcontracting process that I'm very proud of putting a system in to oversee will ensure that the subcontractors are held to the same level of scrutiny as prime contractors, and therefore we don't waste taxpayers' money.
Another project, and you've already alluded to it, that is way over budget is the Croton water filtration plant. The last numbers that we saw were over $3 billion. It was predicted at, maybe at $1 billion. The whole deal was predicated, or at least from a political standpoint, on a trade-off for parkland and park improvements. We've also seen, and we've studied it on this show a number of times, that park improvement money has not gone to where it was supposed to within the specified amount of time. Adolfo Carrion, when he was in that chair just a couple of weeks ago, said if he's mayor, he's going to make sure all the promises are made good. If you're the mayor, is that really realistic at this point? Can you come up with the money? Can we really make good on those promises? Or is this one of those that you say, well, bad deal, and we'll just use it as a loss and move on?
Well, there's a few different issues here. First of all, it's not just the parkland. It's also jobs. Jobs for local Bronx residents. Where are the jobs? It doesn't seem like they've materialized, even though...
Certainly not through that project. I think the numbers showed it was between 18 and 20% at its highest.
Nowhere near the promises that were made. And this is a project that is many times over its original budget already. Specifically on the... And so whoever the next mayor is not going to be able to recoup the money, the billions of dollars that have potentially been wasted in this project. Mm-hmm. On the issue of the $240 or $250 million of park improvements that were part of the deal, I think the next mayor should make the commitment, and I certainly make that commitment today, that whatever was promised to the Bronx residents, whether it be by my administration or previous administration, the city should make good on. On that particular issue, this is an issue that Assemblymember Dinowitz goes after me every time he sees me, and so we are nearing completion of an audit that looks to see if, in fact, the Parks Department made good on its promise for an additional $250 million worth of park improvements, or did they simply continue to do what they were going to do in the first place and
then just move the money and
then
never really added.
Recategorize that as part of the Croton Reservoir project?
Nonetheless, there is another 5.6% increase in the water rate hike, which they say is directly related to that. I mean, this is an ongoing issue for the taxpayers of the city of New York.
I don't know if it's clear that it's directly related to this
They said it was.
project, yeah.
Who knows what?
I mean, think about it. It's how ridiculous is this that this this year, the implication from the Bloomberg administration was, hey, great news. It's only going to be a 5.6% increase on your water rates. Good news, because for 4 years previously, there were double-digit rate hikes. I mean, this is ridiculous. It's pretty clear that the amount of money being charged and collected through our water rates is more than is actually needed to maintain the water and sewer infrastructure. And that shouldn't be the case. It then simply becomes no more than a backdoor tax that is very regressive in nature and people can't afford.
You're proud, and your office is proud of a new online tool called the People's Budget NYC to give the public a chance to vote on city budget proposals. Now, I've had discussions with any number of elected officials who say, you know what, we don't do government by proxy. We make our own decisions. We get a feel for what the people want. Is this really a useful thing, or just kind of something nice that the controller came up with that'll make him kind of feel good and be a good populist
well,
sort
look,
of move?
I hope people feel good about it, but this is something that President Obama has done. This is something that members of Congress have done, and so we're happy to bring this, what they call crowdsourcing technology, to the residents of New York City. First, let's take a look at the people's budget. I have always had an issue with this ridiculous budget dance that takes place every year. The mayor in spring comes out with his proposed budget that invariably includes elimination of library service, closures of fire companies cutbacks of after-school programs, all things that people need and therefore complain about the potential of those cutbacks taking place. And several months of protests go by, and then at the last minute, the mayor and the council speaker waltz in and say that, well, you know, we're not going to have many of those budget cuts.
You spend 3 months of scaring
3
communities.
months of scaring, 3 months of wasted government resources because people have to respond to complaints and constituents who are afraid of what's going to happen. Now, and I think even worse, it focuses attention, public attention, on a very small sliver of the city's budget. No more than a couple of $100 million at a time that is involved in this budget dance, when the city budget is $70 billion a year. It's almost like, okay, everybody focus on this piece, but leave all of this alone.
So how does this tool get involved in this?
My office has taken a top-to-bottom review of the entire budget. We have seen shortcomings in the budget where we think needs that should be taken care of are not being met. And so we've proposed $15 billion over the next 4 years of additional needs that should be paid for in the city budget, such as baselining of 7-day library service. And we also have $15 billion of new revenues that the city can and should be tapping, so that we'll have a balanced budget. The priorities and the needs of the people will be taken care of. And in this people's budget, I've identified 70 specific budget proposals that we're now asking people to go online in this crowdsourcing tool to give a thumbs up or a thumbs down on, and to suggest new projects or new things that the city should be funding.
If you were mayor, would you take something like this seriously?
Oh, absolutely, yes, because this is something that is, you know, you use technology to not only make the city more transparent, and I think we may have talked about Checkbook NYC, which is my
next question. So you can, okay. You brought it up. You asked your own question.
So Checkbook NYC is an unprecedented online tool that makes the government spending here in New York City far more transparent than any other city or state in this country. That's not my words. Those are the words of the United States Public Interest Research Group, which is a pretty prominent national organization. And so what we've done is essentially put the city's checkbook online. Anybody can log on to checkbooknyc.com and take a look at all the expenditures that we make. Who made the expenditures, meaning which agency, for what purpose, what date the payment was made, how much it was for. You can sort, you can search, you can download, and it's like going to your bank and looking at your own checkbook.
I remember a long time ago, and this goes way back in our show, when Herman Badillo became the head of the, at that time, Board of Education, and for the first time they had actually laid out a budget. It seems remarkable for the city schools. I guess this is a similar kind of thing, as a way of roping it in and giving everybody.
Well, so Checkbook NYC is the app where you can look at the actual expenditure. So it's kind of like looking at what's already happened. The People's Budget. It's at www.peoplesbudgetnyc.com. that is a way for the public to give input into what they think should be part of the city's budget. And that's, of course, prospective looking.
Let's talk about, with whatever time we have left, which is not a lot, about some of the other issues that I know are on people's minds as they consider going into the voting booth. Do you support the emphasis on testing that this version of mayoral control has brought?
No, I think
well, go ahead.
Absolutely not. I think the testing has gone too far. Now, I don't think we're going to get away completely from standardized testing, and the annual standardized tests should take place. It's what you do with those results, though. And in these years, we have seen the overemphasis on these results to the point where the mayor wants to make them the overriding factor in teacher evaluations, decisions on
about
whether...
30 seconds. Give me what a vision of what Department of Education looks like under a Mayor John Liu.
The Department of Education will be in charge of running schools, not as business divisions reporting up to DOE Corporation, but as schools, as places of learning where teachers are relied upon and trusted to teach, where principals are trusted to lead their schools, and where kids are not tested, they are taught.
How do you react to requirements for a teacher evaluation system? How would that negotiation or dialogue have gone under a John Liu administration?
If that dialogue was finished, as far as most people can tell. The teachers' union and the chancellor had come up with an agreement, and at the 11th and a half hour, Mayor Bloomberg scrapped it. And in the process, we lost hundreds of millions of dollars for our public school kids here in New York City. If I had been in charge, if they had come up with a plan, a solid plan already, I would have said, okay, let's move forward. Let's not lose any money, and let's move forward with this evaluation plan that both the chancellor and the leaders of the teachers already came up with.
So I hope you'll come back to BronxTalk so I can get to the other 24 questions I have for you.
I'm available next Monday, Gary.
Thank you so much.
You don't have to have the others on.
Well, that'll be up to them. John Liu, thank you for joining us. We always appreciate your input onto the show. And folks, if you have further comments or questions on anything you heard on tonight's show or anything going on in the Bronx, then email them to us at bronxtalk@hotmail.com or make a comment on our Facebook page, and we'll read those on the air during a future edition of our program. Archives of our program are available at bronxnet.org. You click Bronx Talk on the right-hand navigation bar. You can become a fan of Bronx Talk on Facebook. I'm going to ask the controller to do the same thing. Next Monday night, another Democratic candidate for mayor will join us. Sal Albanese will make a return to Bronx Talk. He was last on the show. Do you know what year? It's 1997 when he ran for mayor the last time. Bronx Talk, of course, we're here Monday nights, thanks to Jane, our producer, and to Shirley, our director, to Dina, our studio coordinator, and to all the cast of thousands. And to you, we'll see you next week. Good night.